think we start? While everybody's coming in, I'll just read you these quotations from the classics, which I like so much, and about this special space. And so in the Ling Shu, chapter 1, says, if Qi arises, there is a therapeutical result. The certainty of a result is clear, as seeing a blue sky after the wind has swept away the clouds. So this is about the importance of being there with the Qi. And then again, the Ling Shu, chapter 9, saying, when the doctor inserts the needle, he should be in a state of profound calm, should be at one with the Shen, and should act if the doors and windows are closed, so in a separate space. And his Hun and Po are not dissipated. His Yi and Shen are concentrated. His Jing and Qi are not separated, and he does not hear the voices of people around him, so that his Jing is focused, his Shen is united, and his Zhi is concentrated on the needle. And the last one is from Su Wen, and I think you know it. As though on the edge of a cliff, careful not to fall, the hands as though holding a tiger, grasp it firmly. The Shen does not allow itself to be distracted by things. Observe the patient with a calm mind without looking left or right. To do it well, one must needle straight, without deviations. One must rectify his own Shen in order to rectify the Shen of a patient. The doctor must look him in the eyes. The Shen is fixed. Qi flows with greater ease. So again, about being there. Now, the video. Please do not take photos.
Acupuncture is easy, even in small children. We just have to be careful to their not yet stable Qi system. We see how this 1-year-old boy moves his mouth. We may think he is feeling the Qi. Children are curious. We'll see later how to deal with children who may be more afraid. We let them touch the needles if they want to. It's a kind of Qi stimulation. We use relatively thin needles, 0.16, 0.25 millimeters, generally 1 centimeter or longer. No guide tubes, so to have a better perception of Qi and less points than in adults.
You feel something, right?
I think that human beings in general, and children in particular, appreciate situations that broaden their experience, and acupuncture may be a good example of this. I chose to show the needling and the stimulation of the same point in different children. I always ask if it's okay. These 2 children are older than the previous one, so the method is closer to what we use with adults. The number of needles is lower, the time is shorter, but always enough to get the Qi and to do something with it. Here is the other child. Whatever the age, even in smaller children, we generally prefer to get children into what is happening, so instead of distracting them. So to create a kind of bubble, as a father once said, a special space with its own quality and intensity. We all know how the classics speak so well of this special space. Chapter 9 of Linishu speaks of profound calm, Hunampo not dissipated, the mind will concentrated on the needle, etc. And this famous chapter 54 of Su Wang says that the doctor is as on the edge of a cliff, careful not to fall. The hands as holding a tiger, grasp it firmly. One must needle straight and rectify the shen so the qi will flow with ease. At the same time, we have to be flexible. If this hyperactive boy wants to draw, it's perfectly fine. He still wets the bed at night, and a magic pumpkin will help him to keep the pea doors closed during sleep. This boy was nearly 5 years old, and this was his second session. His father is there, close but not interfering, and the boy is very brave. You can see he is afraid, and we take his fear seriously, but we are not afraid and should not be afraid. Somehow he knows all this and can feel both our respect and our determination. Mi appoggio solo, tu dimmi. Vado? Ok, va bene? He says, aspetta, and I say, aspetto, I wait. And then he says, via, go, and I do it. Aspetto. Scendi un po' molle. We started a video recording in 2012, but Xiao Xiao was born in 2005 in Milano, and it operates once a week, only for children. In these first 12 years, we treated 332 children for a total of 2,355 sessions. We mostly use acupuncture, pediatric tuina, and moxibustion, plus some other traditional methods such as gua sha, ear seeds, and cupping. We do not use predefined protocols, and treatments depend on the age and the characteristics of the child and from the pattern of disharmony. Xiao Xiao is also a teaching clinic, and in the first 12 years, 125 trainees attended basic or advanced pediatric training. In 2012, we started to collect photos of all patients' tongues, well, except babies, of course. Quite often, we teach parents a sequence of pediatric tuina specific to their child to perform at home. And this helps the treatment and also helps parents feel empowered to cope with the problem. We also discuss lifestyle habits, mainly with regard to food, sleep, and rest. Since the beginning, we recorded that data in a specific design program that allows us to better analyze the methods we use, the diagnostic processes, the outcomes. And it helps when we think and discuss about what we do, and it is a useful tool to share knowledge. The last presentation of Xiao Xiao work is published in the Journal of Chinese Medicine, February 2017. I asked the boy, is it there? And he says yes. In China would be Yola. Grazie, grazie. Ma grazie, grazie. Grazie. Questa è una manina bellissima. Dove li facciamo a questo punto? Here again, I chose a few videos with the same point in different children, different ages, and as you may see, the stimulation even in this small child, a baby, is there. We don't retain needles, but yes, stimulation is there. Okay. This is the same boy we saw at the beginning, 1 year later, so he's 2 now, and we may notice that he hasn't developed a fear for acupuncture. In both cases, like the baby before, they had conjunctivitis. As Julian Scott does, Julian Scott, great acupuncturist, great teacher, we insert the needle, then let it go so it can adjust itself. Then we reach the chi, make sure we get there, and once there, we stimulate according to diagnosis. We may or may not leave the needle according to age and to conditions. Then we extract the needle with the same care and attention as a final communication, I'd say. Here the boy says to me that the pizzichino, the tickling, when I took it out the last time was too strong, so I agreed not to do it. Ora facciamo così, noi facciamo il pizzichino finale, va bene? Va bene. Adesso lasciamo questo qui, così possiamo... There are a few children that don't like to lie down. It's okay. And this is one of them, and also one of the children that like to touch and stimulate their needles. We see here a girl with Down syndrome who was very concerned about her bad alopecia. We treat her as we do with adults, with long needles around the area, plus of course needles according to diagnosis. This case belongs to the variety of disturbances for which acupuncture is helpful. We treat also children with digestive problems, atopic dermatitis, headache, nocturnal enuresis, retarded development, beside the 2 large groups of recurrent respiratory diseases and children with sleep disturbances or hyperactive. This is the same girl at the beginning, before treatment. And here she is again, treated with plant blossom needle, and she had the same treatment every day by her mother. They were both very good because they kept doing it daily for months. As mentioned before, we use also some collateral traditional methods as cupping, in this case on the ganchu, bladder 18, and ear seeds. Here we can see a colleague preparing them. But mainly we do moxa, a lot of moxa. Not the direct moxa in children, always a stick, and we do use moxa when we do acupuncture or pediatric tune-up, both In almost all cases of spleen insufficiency or lung or kidney qi insufficiency, or when qi is affected, as in this case. Here, at the end of the video, I added a couple of minutes of pediatric twina, a method that can be very effective and that we use a lot. Pediatric twina is a traditional branch of Chinese medicine, different from adult twina, and it is widely used in modern hospitals. For acupuncturists, it's easy to learn since it is based on the same physiology and the same diagnostic principles as acupuncture, and the technique is very simple compared to adult twina. The sequence of our stimulations takes only 10-12 minutes, as any combination of acupuncture points, it is individually designed according to Chinese diagnosis, but then it can be taught to parents to perform at home. In this small girl with cough and catarrh, we applied a sequence to reinforce spleen qi, diffuse lung qi, and transform phlegm. Each stimulation lasts 1.5 minutes, and generally the sequence has 8 to 12 stimulations. The nice thing about Xiao Xiao is that we work as a team, and students can become juniors and seniors, and this is how we can keep fees low, teach parents, teach trainees, do the research work, and enjoy what we do.
Go to your next slide.
Yeah. Done it.
Oh, that's
Good. Yes. So, would you have any question about what we saw now? Okay. Maybe we go back, now that I know how to do it, to this representation of the main patterns in children. Okay, this is somehow different from adults because the weight of the pattern is different, and the very important thing is what can go to something, transform into something else, and where a pattern can come from, which is always the case, of course, in adults as well, but in children it's particularly important because things change so quickly. And now, as you may see, we have food accumulation, which is in the center, and it's in the center because it's a main pattern in our culture and society. And food accumulation is something that is specific of children. very common, and it's said to be the root of 100 diseases, because really from that condition it can develop, you see, to flame, it can transform into heat, it can produce instability and clouding of Shen, and also it can produce insufficiency of spleen Qi, and so from a fullness pattern can transform into an emptiness pattern. But how does this work, this pattern? Is from too much food. And too much food means not only quantity, but in quality and in frequency. So this is a very important pattern for hyperactive children. That's why I'm staying on it, okay? Because it's the root of many, many cases of hyperactive and attention deficit. So the frequency of eating is important. As we know, as Chinese practitioner, we know that the hollow organs, the food, should fill and then empty. And if I don't have the time to empty, it's a problem. So that means breastfeeding, and later on when the children eat all kind of junk food. Because of the junk food, and we go to the quality later on, but also for the frequency, because they keep having something stimulating their stomach and intestines. So the junk food, we know is bad, and everybody, all parents know it is bad. But why? In terms of Chinese medicine, sugar and flavorings and salty food is bad because it's excessive. It's an extreme taste. That's why the spleen Qi has problems in transforming it, because it's too much. It's not only quantity but quality. It's a too strong flavor, too extreme. And we can talk to parents about it in terms of, let's say, for instance, with sugar. We can say, because it's difficult. I mean, they know it's not good, and still they do it. So we have to find a way of taking it from another side somehow. So if we say, for instance, okay, with sugar, we know, that we have more strength and we can we feel more energetic, but then we need more sugar because our body does not transform food anymore, and so we need more sugar, more sugar, more sugar. And then they say, oh yes, like an addicted. And that makes a little bit of a switch in their mind, and so they don't want to have an addicted child. So that any of you can find a different way. This is a way that I found out it works. Not always, but it does work better than saying no, don't have any sugar. Because they may stop the sugar for a while, but then they go back to it. So anyway, the point is that all this food, in the different senses, overcomes the ability of a spleen Qi to transform, and so accumulates. That's why it's called accumulation of food. And as manifestations, it's a small child, so we see swollen abdomen, tense, hard, and we can have pains like colic pains in infantile colic pains, regurgitations, belching, and irregular bowel function. Typically, the stools are green and really smelly. The parents know that they are more smelly than usual and greenish. Then later on they can become hard because very, very quickly food accumulation transforms into heat, and so that of course dries up the stools and we have constipation. And full breath, and also the smell of the skin, of the sweat, of the head is bad. And again, parents know about it. We can remember it. So if we have nasal discharges, greenish, yellow-green, and red cheeks, which are not healthy red, but kind of dark red. So that's not immunosufficiency, of course, but it's food accumulation. And we could have a cradle cap, eczema, and then very easily we said it transforms into heat or into phlegm, because then if we have accumulation, chi cannot flow easily, and then phlegm is built up. So, and it can consume the spleen sheath and interferes. This is an important thing to remember with children, hyperactive children, interferes with the smooth flow of chi. And so that means interferes with the organ that mostly has to do with the smooth flow of chi, so with liver. So if interrupts the flow of liver, that means that the emotion comes up, anger comes up. So it's the opposite in adults. We have the anger first, frustration, and then spleen, liver chi stagnation or constraint. In children is food accumulation, stop, and then anger coming up. And so we have these children who are always opposing to parents. I mean, opposition is fine because they have to develop their own individuality and separate and so on. But it's not so good when everything is a no, because they suffer. I mean, they don't enjoy life so much because it's always something disturbing them and not being accepted. So, and for parents, of course, or teachers and so on. So this is really something that disturbs the chi and their lives. And parents do know about it from the very beginning, because they say, for instance, oh, yes, my child is never relaxed, always kind of tense, and or we can say it's like if something disturbs him or her. Yes, and also the waking up at night has that kind of type. So they wake up, but they don't need cuddling. It's not an insufficiency waking up. Okay, it's different. And they didn't have nightmares, or it's a kind of something really disturbing them. And it's this blockage of the chi, the flow of chi. So this is really a pattern which is at the basis of 100 illnesses, as they say. Okay. So the other patterns, we go back more specifically with hyperactive children, and because the others, you know, it's like in adults. The only thing is that really these are the main ones in children. So we make it really easy and simple because the root patterns are so few, 6, 7, okay? And all of them can, as you see, transform and produce instability and clouding of Shen, which is what we are talking about now, today. So instability and clouding of Shen is not a primary pattern. We never talk about Shen being good or bad. We don't say anything about Shen directly, not even in adults. I mean, I wrote this book, it's 500 or more pages, but still, we cannot say anything about Shen because that's something else. We can say that something is clouding the Shen, or agitating the Shen, or not rooting the Shen, okay? But we don't make a judgment directly on Shen. So any of them can, any of this pattern can affect the Shen system. Okay. Now, agitated children. And so we see how to interpret their manifestations and achieve these harmonies. You don't really, if you like to take notes, it's fine for me, but really I can send you all these, so don't worry about writing everything, because I know that listening and writing, for some people is useful, for me it's useful, but for some people maybe not so much. So anyway, children naturally have a young and lively nature, quicksilver. They move a lot, they go from laughing to screaming, from joy to desperation, and then to joy again. So they have this quality, as we said before. They move by running, they speak by shouting, and they don't sit quietly most of the time, and they try to force their will upon others, and they explode in furious rages. If you think of it, we are used to it, but I mean, if an adult would make such a scene, it's really rage. And so, but it is all physiological, natural, normal. It becomes a problem if all this interferes with their growth and with their internal integration. And so if it impairs their relations with the others, with adults and children, or if interferes with their learning not only at school, but learning in life. And so we see them very reckless, impulsive. And what is impulsive? Impulsive means that we do something immediately, okay? A reaction. We have a stimulus, either physical or mental or emotional, and we react immediately, like shooting in the American fields, okay? Something happens and I shoot. And that's a very young reaction because it's immediate. It doesn't have a pause of a yin. The yin is not there to concentrate, calm down, and think, and have that space. So impulsivity is very typical of these children. And so they're prone to accidents, of course, and what they do is they move from one activity to another, and they never complete the initial task, and so they don't sit still, and listening is an impossible task for them. So it's a hard life, and they easily become isolated. That's the problem, because they don't want to deal with them anymore. They are children, and so they don't want to play with them, and so their self-esteem gets lower and lower, and they have difficulty at school, and it's a vicious circle, because the more they feel bad, the more they do it, and the worse it is. And so there's a high risk to develop an antisocial behavior later on in life. And I did put here the main diagnostic criteria for ADHD from the DSM-5 point of view. There is also the ICD-10 that calls the same pattern, disturbance of activity and attention, and it does have more or less the same criteria, which is mainly a significant impairment in social, academic, or occupational functioning in at least two settings. So that means at home, at work, at school. And it must be present at least for 6 months, so not just a reaction to something. And several symptoms are present before the age of 12. In the DSM-4 it was a bit different, it doesn't matter now. Anyway, and then 6 or more of the following symptoms, which are these, but I don't want to go through all of them. I go back when we talk, because
Elisa, for your in front of the screen.
How do I do it? Okay,
thank you.
Sorry. So I send it to you, or you can find it anywhere about if you look for the diagnostic criteria. The cause of the disease is unknown, as you know, and one hypothesis is that the central nervous system is not functioning well, and so mainly the prefrontal regions which modulate the emotional reactions and behavior, and so that involves dopaminergic and noradrenergic mediators, and that's why the pharmacological therapy is with stimulants, which looks strange. And also in conventional studies anyway, the outcome of these cases is strictly linked to the behavior that the environment has. And so they try to have behavioral strategies, therapeutical strategies at school and at home, and that is of great help. So I don't want to go through all this, but just let's talk about the general characteristics, which are the same or less that we have seen before. So they run around, they climb, they don't sit still, they fidget. This fidgeting is important because if you have maybe a 6-year-old child, he can sit, but he keeps moving his feet and hands. So this is a criteria. So they switch from one activity to another, they're easily distracted, they don't seem to listen, and they constantly talking, and they blurt out answers, and interrupt when they talk, or also when they intervene when other children are playing. They do not wait for their turn, and they engage in dangerous activities, as we said that, and they lose or forget items. Whatever, they forget toys and mobiles and books and pens, and it's really a hard life for everybody. So what we do at Xiao Xiao is to treat children not only with ADHD, because fortunately we don't have so many, but children that also, that are agitated or restless or always moving and impulsive and so on, which is in the area of ADHD, even if they don't have a diagnosis. But also small children, babies that wake up very frequently, and that's a big problem for parents, and because they're tired already, and this it's really a risk, because when the mothers and fathers become more nervous, of course, and tired, and then that's really a problem. Or maybe the child doesn't know to sleep. It takes maybe an hour or 2 hours before going to sleep. So we treat a lot of them. So we have in the data, we have many small children and babies because of that. And also children, as we said before, who are tense, easily angry, and opposing to everything. And that's also something that mainly comes from food accumulation, but not only, of course. And at the same time, we have, on the opposite side in some way, children who are fearful, anxious, and they need for reassurance all the time, and so they're kind of emotionally very frail, and they need a lot of attention, and that's like, let's say, when a child is sick, that the parents have to give more attention because they need the parents' chi. They don't have enough. It's an emptiness, most of the cases. I mean, we can't make a specific relation between the pattern and the manifestation, but mainly they need more chi. And so the presence of their moaning and requiring and wanting the parents' presence is because of that. Okay, so it's important for them to have reassurance, and also if this is not taken care of, then also at school it becomes a problem, and they may. Do you know this pattern, Hyperactive Children with Spleen Deficiency by Julian Scott? It's okay. It's really interesting because he says if we have children very, very active, they come into your clinic and kind of destroy everything very quickly. Okay, and children do a bit like that, okay, because they are so alive. But these are really incredible. And so they're very active, and they go to sleep very late, they sleep little, and parents do not stop them. That's why they can destroy your clinic, but they don't eat, okay? They eat very little, so they eat, of course, but eat very little and just a few foods. And this of eating little is a main sign for spleen qi deficiency in children. Okay, eating little may mean eating little in quantity, but also in quality. So they have always the same thing. I don't know, in Italy it could be spaghetti with no sauce and kind of cheese or whatever, chips. But only maybe 2 or 3 things, and always the same. That's eating little because of the quality. Because they don't have chi enough to get to know new flavors. That's the Chinese reason behind it. Okay, your chi, in terms of the parent, we say make friends with another chi. Like when you pass from breastfeeding to solid food, what we suggest is to go very slow, generally speaking, because our chi must be able to transform and have good chi. And so the chi of the food must become friend with our chi, okay? And if we have a spleen qi deficiency, then our qi is not enough to do this, okay? So these children sleep very little, destroy your clinic, and eat little, how is it? I mean, where does this qi come from? From parents. Yeah? From parents. Like, it came to my mind because I said, like, when a child is sick, that, of course, we stay with him or her for more time because the qi is one. And so we give some qi, which is lucky and needed. But the child is sick, and then hopefully we'll get better and healthy again. But in these cases, there is no change. It will go on and on and on, like an addicted again. And so this is going to be a big problem because the child will do the same pattern at school and trying to get the attention of the other students and teachers by doing crazy things. So it's not a healthy way of getting qi. And it's a bad solution, but it is the only one they have. And so that's how we have to understand that not all hyperactive children have just, I don't know, fire. Maybe there is something lacking in the root. So that's important. So children have need for reassurance and need for care and attention. Maybe it's not immediately evident, but we have to recognize it and treat them, reinforcing and so on. Okay, so another group of children, of course, that we have in this project that we call CALM is also children with cognitive, perceptual, motor coordination disorders, and also children who have, let's say, somatic symptoms, manifestations, like vomiting or cough, but with a very clear psychogenic origin. Maybe we can have if we have a time, a brief case of a child that, for instance, vomits, but just before something which is engaging, I don't know, school or sport event or whatever. Okay, so it is always chi, ni, as we know, rebellious chi, either with stomach or lung that comes up instead of going down. Okay, and that's nice about Chinese medicine, is what we like, that the idea is one, and then it can come up more in a somatic or in a psychic way, but the problem is the same. So in this project, we put also these children. So we had 85 children, and this project in this way started in 2008, which doesn't mean that before we hadn't seen children like that, but the specific project is almost 10 years now. Now, pathogenesis. This is the core of everything. Why? Why these children are either too agitated or anxious or whatever. We go back to what we said before. So, two main reasons. Children yin is not sufficient, again compared to yang, and liver as often an excess, as we said before. So, the point is that there is an imbalance between yin and yang qi, and yin is what? Quietness, concentration, pause, as we said before, softness, and all this quality is disturbed by the excess of yang. And yang is movement, expansion, heat, action. So really the point is this imbalance. And in children, it's quite easy to have this, well, relatively easy to have this because of this children yin is not sufficient and liver is often in excess. So this excessive movement, qi, expresses also in messy, chaotic emotions, because emotions are what? Movements of qi movements. Okay, anger is a qi that comes up like a dragon, they say. Huh? So emotions are not something different. It's qi again, and they're movements of qi. And so if there is all this very young situation, very moving, very active, they move too fast and they cannot integrate. And in that way they become overwhelming, and they may explode as well, of course, and anyway interfere with a decent balance. And particularly heat, again, excess of yang, disturbs the heart, as we know, and of course it's integrating and harmonizing function, and agitates and confuses shen. Okay, this is another way of saying the same things. So on one side we can have this heat, and we go back to see that we go to see how heat can, where it can come from, and we can have a yin deficiency primarily. Okay, so this is a deficiency pattern, and so in this case, there is a weakness of the root and a gain and instability of Shen, because Shen is nourished by Qi and rooted in Jing. So both heat and deficiency facilitate the transformation into phlegm, and phlegm, as you know, can be Yao-Xing or Wu-Xing, material or not, substantial or not substantial. And the not substantial phlegm clouds mists the Xin Chao, the heart portals, and that's what we take into account mainly in this kind of manifestations, because it mists the mind and emotions, of course. So these are the main patterns, and we see them one by one now, quickly. Now, heat. Heat is one of the main ones. We said it can come from food accumulation, right? Also in small children from Taidu, the fatal toxins, from the lingering pathogenic factors that go inside, stay there, and make a mess, transform into fure, and disturb, and from insufficiency. So they're all causes of heat, full or empty. And so heat, as we said, does not allow the child to rest, so we have poor sleep, agitates Qi, so we have this restlessness, and interferes with the yin side. And yin is again pause and concentration and attention, and so that's why these children have problems with their attention. And also they cannot deal with their emotions because they are so agitated, so overwhelming. And another thing that is not said in the conventional criteria, but we find it, is also that this heat can transform into wind, internal wind, as we know. And we do have children with tics, and it can be a Tourette or a pandas, but also just tics. And we do have many, well, relatively many, yes. So, and as usual in child's medicine, you have to take into account also the somatic symptoms. So the main ones for children for heat is constipation, some kind of red on the skin, and the sleep, of course, and the tongue. Is it clear? Okay. So,
Can I just
yeah.
what's the underlying factors for the liver deficiency? I mean, the stagnation of Qi. I mean, are we going to think about the diet and the nutritional? Because all that, the root problem will be the impairment of the digestive system if they are accumulating the Qi. Am I right to say that?
Well, I haven't talked about Qi stagnation, liver Qi stagnation.
Well, accumulation of food, you were saying?
Yeah, it's different. It's
Yeah.
This is something we have to keep in mind. It's a good question because I want to go back to this. In adults, we have Qi, liver Qi constraint or stagnation because we have, anger or frustration, and then the Qi stops, and we have stagnation. Okay. In children, it's different because they. Sorry?
You get the liver first.
Yeah, because they don't repress emotions. They do have emotions. They do have anger, but in small children I'm talking. They don't repress them. Okay, anger comes up. So it's not a problem of not having anger, but not repressing it. So it's the other way, as you were saying. It's food accumulation. So chi stops, is, blocked. And if chi is blocked, the liver chi does not play its function of smooth flow of chi, and so the chi, instead of going smoothly, comes up very dragon-like, and that's anger. Okay, that's the way.
It's like a co-cycle. It's a co-cycle there. The accumulation of the liver invading the stomach and the spleen vice versa, no? We just want to know the pathology of it from a TCM point of view.
Yeah, it is a TCM point of view.
Yeah.
This is the basic, really the basic. Because sometimes we have some difficulties in going back to the root of it. Okay, so the liver, Shu Xie, the spray and discharge, what's the name of it? Discharge of the liver is something, but it's not in the Neijing. It came around the 14th century, okay? And so that's something that we take for granted from the beginning, but the liver was not explained in that way in the beginning. The liver was this quality of qi, okay, of moving like wood or like wind. So either around nicely or too fast and changing. So that's the quality of it. And really with children it's so clear that we really have to understand the basic of it. So if there is a chi, it's quite clear. I mean, I have food. The chi is not flowing properly because it's stopped, okay? And if it's stopped, it can't flow and it goes up. And that's a liver movement. And it's anger. It's the chi quality, it's the movement of the chi. That's really, then we can say, sure, it's an invasion and the 5 elements and the curse cycle. But it's much simpler than that. It's really at the root of it. I don't know if I make myself clear. Okay. And Julian was great because he said, if you make a diagnosis which is too complex in a child, go back. Sometimes it does happen, but most of the time you may be too much thinking about it, and you have to go back, okay, to the very simple things. As you may have noticed in the diagram, we didn't talk about blood deficiency, for instance. Okay, it's not impossible. You can have a blood deficiency in a child. It's a very, very serious condition. So when you have a deficiency, then you can have even a blood deficiency. But normally, that's the main thing. So we stick to the main patterns and then go deeper and maybe in the more specific patterns. Because it's all, yeah, okay. Okay, so heat, chi and blood deficiency, well, this is what we know. The only thing which I would add is that spleen chi deficiency is in children shown by the poor appetite, and by poor appetite we mean also quality. Okay, and then all the rest you know. Only one thing, when we say tired in children, that doesn't mean that a child go to bed or to the sofa, okay? Tired in children means that they get nervous usually. So parents, they know when children are tired because you can't handle them and everything is wrong. They're nervous. And so that's a tired child. So we don't have to stick to the idea of somebody like that just lying, because a child does not do that. So when we say that there is tiredness, we must remember what a child is when tired. And then what we said, emotionally fragile, dependent, fearful, anxious, but mainly needing a lot of attention. So these moaning children, and you know, mom, 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 like that. It's this, okay? Okay, then we have this phlegm, this stimulation. And of course, phlegm can, as we know from the normal pathology, because accumulate, and because of spleen and lung Qi immaturity, and in children this is particularly important, and also because of food accumulation. Food accumulation is really a bad beast. And phlegm is quite common because of these two. And normally, the most common pattern is, manifestation is that the child has catarrh, and then cough, and then all these respiratory recurrent diseases. That's most of them, because it is substantial phlegm. And you know how to recognize phlegm in children besides the normal signs? It is also and lymph nodes. Okay, if I have swollen lymph nodes quite often, and maybe, I don't know, in Italy, pediatrician usually say to parents, okay, this child has, you know, swollen lymph nodes, so they know, even if maybe they don't have them at the moment, so you can't palpate them. And the other sign is this granular skin. You know, it's mainly here, but it can be any place. It's like a millet, white, not really, anyway, clear, not red. And rough, it's not rough skin, it's really like little grains. And it's not itching, it's nothing really, it's not a problem, it's not a pathology, but it is a sign of phlegm accumulating, in this case, in the tori, under the skin, because qi and blood cannot flow properly at that level in the surface, and so these little pores are formed. Okay, granules. So, and sticky stools. Usually you find in books mucus in the stools, but that's not so common. In children, it's mainly kind of sticky stools, and in small children, they stick to the diapers, to the nappies, and anyway, parents do know. Parents don't know anything about urines. It's really almost impossible to ask about urines, but they know everything about stools. So smells and the stickiness and color and everything until a certain age, luckily. And later on, it's nice because we can ask the child to keep a journal of the poo-poo journal, and so they have this beautiful. I think there's one in my website, a picture, a photo of it. So anyway, these journals with the day, and if I had stools or not, and what kind, and if I, because constipation is not only having or not having a normal bowel movement, but also if I have to push, and yeah, you know, and of course they're dry and so on, and they like it. They like to keep their own journal separate from parents, of course. And stools may seem not such an important problem. Also, and they're right, pediatricians, they say it's okay also each other day, or, you know, so they don't make a fuss about it. And they're right, they don't need medication, but for us it's a very important sign, because of course if you have constipation meaning, what I said before. It means that there is some heat drying up. So, and also it changes. It's one of the signs that can change. And so it gives us an idea of our treatment and the results of it. So if you have a child, for instance, with a very serious problem, like retarded development, so it's impossible to see the results immediately. It takes time. But we can see if stools change. We know that something is happening, and it's important for us and also for parents, because so they have an idea that something is happening really. Stools and sleep as well. Yes. So, okay, so anyway, if this plan goes to cloud the orifices of the heart, then we can have this very extreme signs like emotional swings, violent behavior, or on the other side, vague eyes, opaque, and sudden energy loss, and all kind of more serious problems like language disorders and poor coordination and so on. And as you know, flank is a bad list. And we have to move chi a lot to be able to transform it. Okay, so we have to finish at 1, right? Okay, fine. So, what do we do? First of all, as we said before, calm the spirit and stabilize the mind, first. So, the more we can sit stable and and be there, better. And that's also what we should do with our child. But to reach that, we have to make a diagnosis. Make a diagnosis means to see what manifestations mean. Okay, a diagnosis is read manifestations and give a meaning to them. To diagnosis, to give a meaning to what I see. Okay? So, we have to understand why the Shen is either agitated, unstable, clouded, or whatever. And again, we go back to our patterns and see which is the main one, because again, heat is okay, heat, but it can come from food accumulation, it can come from deficiency and so on. So I have to treat that, not directly the heat. And so we have the normal therapeutic principles that we all know. And now to do it, well, once we got the idea, really do something about it is so easy, because the points are the main points we all know. There's nothing special about them, and we use really the big points for children. Well, in the video, I tried to put the same points because so you could see, how they were used and needled in different ages and children. So I chose liver, large intestine 4, and what was that, lung 7, and sometimes liver 3, and yin tongue. But normal normally we use really a few points. Then I tell you which ones if you like. But the main thing is to understand the pattern also, because we have to try to do something. Because if there is food accumulation, then we can treat the child. But if they keep doing the same habit, having the same habit, then it's a problem. So that's the most difficult side, really. And the other thing is that when there is an insufficiency, moxa is very, very useful, very much. And with a stick, as you saw. And the other thing is that quite often we use this pediatric tuina, and we teach the sequence to parents. So I hope I'll be able to organize some seminar in UK, because it'd be nice. I mean, there is, I don't know if you belong to some group or some school or whatever, we can think about it, because in 2 days, really, you'll be able to, it's a very practical thing, and we do a lot of practice, and in 2 days, you're ready to use it. It's so simple. So, anyway, okay, acupuncture points. Now, of course, sorry, I go back for a minute. Okay, let's say if I have to clear heat or lingering pathogens or food accumulation, you know the points. Okay, it's like for adults, it doesn't change much. If you like, we can go back to them, but anyway. Sorry, also for moxa. Moxa, for instance, it's even easier, because what point do we use with moxa, mainly? So to tonify spleen, middle jaw, spleen and stomach, we use Remi 12, stomach 36, and back shoe. So bladder 20 and 21. That's it. Okay. Maybe not even all of them. If I have to reinforce kidney and gin, I'd add Remi 6 and of course bladder 23 and do my 4. Okay. And yes, of course, I always use also the, let's say, the middle jaw, the post-heaven points, because pre-heaven and post-heaven are not separate. Okay, we know by the Qigong and internal practices that we can supplement original or pre-heaven Qi by doing something right, as much as we can consume it by doing bad things. So in children, it's always important with the tardy developmental or gene problems to work on both sides. So always, anywhere reinforce and tonify spleen and stomach, middle jaw, and also kidney, of course. And then to reinforce lung qi, again, I can use bladder 13, Fei Shu, but again, spleen. Okay, because the qi is not separated. It's not lung qi there and spleen qi there. So once I supplement the post-heaven qi, the middle jaw qi, then that's the pool of any qi. Okay, so if there is a lung deficiency, then I have to reinforce basic moxa. Okay, now this. So main acupuncture points. Okay, besides the pattern, what can I use? Very simple main acupuncture points. Something on heart, of course, to regulate heart. So I can decide if heart 7 or heart 5, but in children usually I use heart 7, and much more, or something in the back on the line of thin shoe. And then we do use yin tang a lot, really a lot. And then in case I need something more stronger, then I can add either chanting do my 24 or do my 20. And do my 20 can be helped by 19 and 21 or by the session song before it goes around. Okay, but that is already really, really strong. Okay, so it's not, most of the time you don't need it. And by the way, yes, I do use it because also has this idea of rising up the pure chi, right? So it's nice. And it sends down the excessive yang and clears flang and rises up the nice chi. So it's a nice point. And then there is one thing that I do also with adults, an idea which is somebody, actually not me, but some students said, oh, it's the Shen axis. And it's something that actually comes from a psychiatrist from Shanghai. You can find it in the Shen book, but anyway. So she, Jin Shubai, her name, Jin Shubai, and she also refers to Gao Wu, and the idea is to take into account the 3 Dantian, okay, not the 3 Jiao, the 3 Dantian, and choose 1 or more points each Dantian, okay, and to regulate Qi. You know, in Li Shu, chapter 34, I think, talks about Luan Qi, disordered Qi, and in, let's say, emotional and psychic troubles, this Luan Qi is an important part of it. So this is what I do with adults, but it's good also to have in mind with children. And so the idea is one in the upper jiao, and so one can be either the 20 or the yin tang, both. Then one is in the middle dantian. I said jiao before, dantian, sorry. In the middle dantian. And so we can choose. We can choose either we can even choose the 22 if, but this is mainly in adults, if I have, for instance, as a main symptom something in the throat, like Meihuqi, like Meihuqi, the thing here, I'm tired, sorry, and globus hystericus, it's called, okay, when you feel something and there is nothing real, physical, but mainly it's the Danzhong, the 17, Ranmai, and this is for any case in which there is some sign at the chest, any sign, because that means that she is mainly troubled, blocked, messed at that side, at that part, that area, okay? So the idea is to clear this axis, or it's either 17, or maybe we can choose something more related to heart and stomach, so maybe the 15, over 14. Okay, so a low point or a mood point, and that is related also to palpation. So beside what is said, also I can palpate and feel the point, where I can feel, usually it's more kind of tense or even a bit swollen, and that's a good point where to act to send chi down, because the idea is always to send chi down, of course. And then, or of course the 12 is a very good point too. And then we do something of the lower dantian. The lower dantian means either Renmai 6 or Renmai 4. And so one is more on chi and the other one is more on yin and blood. So children usually is Renmai 6. So it could be quite often, maybe we can choose yin tang, let's say, and 17 and 6. So to have this, which is something that we would do, for instance, for asthma, because we anchor the chi. But what the meaning is that to anchor the chi down can be because of asthma, but because of anything that goes up too much. It's the same thing of, the movement of the chi. So to anchor it down, that could be a good idea. And then, of course, points according to patterns and moksha and so on. One thing we do on yin tang sometimes is using bacteria seed. Okay. And in that case, we give them also to do it at home. If a child is old enough, they do it by themselves. And so for sleep problems in very small children, usually, Tuina is enough, and you don't need anything else. But if they cannot come, or if it's a serious case or whatever, we can ask the parent to put the baccaria seed on yin tang before going to sleep, for night, and keep the nut for the night. And that's something that may be of help. Or in hyperactive children, or maybe children that simply are very hyperkinetic and they don't sit down and do their homeworks. So when they come home, they have to do their homeworks. We give them the baccaria seed and ask them to do it themselves. Okay? And so they take care of their own conditions somehow, and that's important. Because somehow they don't put it somewhere else, but take it in their hands. Yes, thank you. And so that's something that we can do. Yes.
I'm just curious about kidney one. Can you use that in terms of calming?
Yes. It's not written here, but it's a very good point, yes. And it's a lower dantian.
Just maybe nice and power
Yeah,
as well.
sure. Yeah. Because usually we do it all, with tuina, so that's why it doesn't come out here. But definitely with tuina, and there are two ways. It's either row, this is the foot, either row or this way. Okay, so outwards. And usually if you want to nourish water and also eliminate some extra fire, you go outwards. Okay, time for questions. Let's finish.
I was quite interested in, sorry to come back to the liver as well, and the etiology. So one of the things I see quite a bit, or a commonly occurring problem in our country now, is a phenomenal amount of pressure we put our kids under at school. They're taking exams at 6, 7 years old, and then again at 10, 11. I just wonder how you feel psychology and stress plays into etiology, on top of things like food and diet, etc.
Yeah, that's a problem. It's a a problem because also children are often overstimulated because of TV and video and so it's a problem because they have all this activity, mind activity, and no physical activity, and so this should be changed in some way. And of course, there is this pressure from expectations, and yeah, this is also relational and family problem. But what we can do sometimes is do something about family, but also if we change something in their chi, then this somehow influences also the system. So if there is in an older child chi stagnation, as you were suggesting, and that flows more fluently, and then of course, then if it's an older child, I can take it as in an adult, you know. Maybe I wasn't clear before. I was saying about food accumulation because of younger children. If it's a child at 10 like that, then I think of him and treat him like an adult. So that doesn't change anything.
What sort of age do you change?
Well, okay. Let's say that pediatric tweener has a good reason until 6, 7. Okay, it could be done a bit over that, and anyway, we change slowly and depends. Yeah, definitely. We use stomach 40 a lot. Really a lot. Really a lot.
Can you get
And lung 7, of course.
With adults, you have quite a mixed condition. And I'm thinking of my own child actually, he's a fidgeter, can't sleep, can't get off to sleep, can't take about an hour to get off to sleep. But he's also quite conditioned, and I was want to nourish his screen and nourish his kidneys, and how do you find balance in which one to go for?
Well, we should see the child, but if you feel that there is insufficiency, definitely nourish and reinforce, because all the fidgeting may come from insufficiency. So as I said before, it's not so much food fire, but from deficiency. It's like when you have water and fire imbalance. Okay, it's not so much the fire, it's the water which is lacking also in adults.
So I know that restlessness and that kind of thing can continue on into early teenage time and adulthood. So I'm curious to know the role that food stagnation may still play for somebody who's a teenager or an adult. Does it continue?
No, food stagnation, food accumulation is really a small child pattern. Yeah. It is the root. It is the root. But then you put it in, your normal diagnosis. Yeah. Which is, of course, diet is a problem, and we know it, but we don't call it any food stagnation anymore.
Right, thank you.
They can't go to sleep. They've done everything, but they're just failing to go to sleep for at least 2 or 3 hours. They fall to 7:30, reading through so forth. But they're not still at 11 o'clock, still up, can't go to sleep. What are the underlying factors for that other than obviously disturbance of the share and all that?
Again, one must look at the child, and as with adults, we can't never in Chinese medicine put a bionivocal thing, one symptom, one diagnosis. It's impossible. And so one has to see if there is insufficiency or excess, and
Or it should be in a food accumulation, which
well,
falls in the bottom.
yeah, but I mean maybe it's not. Yeah,
Mainly, this is mainly.
yeah, yeah, yes, mainly. I should go back to my data and see how many food accumulation we do have, you know. But well, there is insufficiency, of course, as
Yeah,
well.
of course.
Yeah. Well, we do use pediatric twinner, of course, but if you don't, if you can't do it, you just use REN 12 and stomach 36 reducing. That's what Ginoscope does.
I'm curious about parents and managing parents in a children's clinic. Have you ever kind of been termed parent with no one who is their child? Have you ever done being termed a parent with no one who is their child?
Well, you know, if you go into that, it becomes really a problem because either, I mean, if you want, yes, of course, it's okay to do something about the parent, but then it becomes something else. And so our, let's say, policy is to work with the child, but sometimes parents say, well, what about me? And so, but I don't do yin time with parents, I do shaman on the yeah. But yes. The normal ones, but carrier. Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much.